Hey everybody, I just there's a thread on Moms of Master Books right now where we're discussing writing strands and some of the confusion that people are having on writing strands. And so what I would like to do is just briefly talk about the series of writing strands, explain a little bit about it, and I think it'll help clarify what's being expected. So a lot of times when we start a new curriculum, trying to understand what the ebb and flow and what the author is talking about, uh, is just a little bit different. So with Writing Strands is a series that's been available for a number of years. I forget the first published date of Writing Strands. 1988 was the first year that Writing Strands was published. So the series has been available for a long time. The way it was designed, we picked the series up, I think 2 years ago or a year ago. But the way Writing Strands was set up is you have the writing strands and then you have reading strands. And there were two separate programs, two separate books. And it was set up for 1 week of writing, 1 week of reading. The premise is good writers make good, or I'm sorry, good readers make good writers, right? So what we want to do is we want to, through the course of a year, through 36 weeks, you want to write 1 week, practice writing. The second week or the bye week, you want to spend time reading. Now, as a homeschool mom or a homeschool teacher, you have the right to do and adjust this product to whatever fits your needs. If all you want to focus on is the writing and skip the reading, you can do that. If you want to do them in the same week, you could do that as well. But the way the series is set up right now is 1 week of writing, 1 week of reading. Good readers make good writers. The way we do it is at the beginning level, we're working on, in the series, identifying and helping the student understand the different parts of critical thinking in literature. And so when I read something, do I understand who the characters are? Do I understand the setting and how that affects the story? Do I understand the conflict, the resolution, the setting, and the application? So when a student reads something, what we're asking from them is to be able to explain what they're reading. What is the like book one, beginning one, what we're focused on in book one. Let's see. Let me find writing. Yeah, so what we're focusing on in book one, I think, is characters. It's the main idea in the characters. And so the way we've set this up is, okay, so you have your writing assignment week one. Now we move into week two. The first thing we start with is a scripture, a pretty standard account in scripture. And we're trying to teach students throughout the course that the Bible is actually, okay, so this book is not one book, it's a collection of many books, right? There's 66 books in here written by over 40 different authors in 3 different languages over the period of 1,500 years. So this is actually a library of books. It has history, it has poetry, it has allegories, it has all different types of literature is contained in this library. So in the bye week, when they're studying literature, what we're doing is taking different accounts from this, and we want the students to look at the Bible more as a library of literature that they can draw from. And so when they're reading a story in the beginning one, and they see the first book is about Adam and Eve, what we want them to really look at is, who are the characters? Adam, Eve, God himself, the serpent. There's different characters here, and each of those characters will play out as the story tells. And so as they begin learning how to write, it helps them to begin to look at literature and see, okay, when there's characters, let's see how that's played out. Because in my writing, I'm also going to develop characters. I'm going to develop a setting. I'm going to develop a plot. You know, it would be boring if they just said, hey, there was a man, a woman, a snake, and God said, don't do this, and they did it. It's much better. And the writing strands is more about writing descriptively and intelligently to convey a message. Okay. So the way that Writing Strands is set up is 1 week reading, 1 week writing, 1 week reading, 1 week writing, 1 week reading. Readers make good writers. It starts with a Bible story the Bible story helps teach that there's some kind of a plot. So that's kind of a foundation. Then what we recommend is giving them a chapter book. It can be a fiction book. It can be something that interests them. And what you want them to do throughout the course of that is to work. Like in beginning one, it's teaching about character. So if they're reading a book, say Pilgrim's Progress, and they're reading, you assign some chapters for that week. Who are the characters? And just get them to talk about it. So Writing Strands is a little bit different in that it's not a heavily administered type product. It's more of a writing course. It gives you a lot of flexibility and openness. So in the beginning, they're saying, hey, here's a pencil. Let's describe how to write this in a way that is descriptive, so that it almost conveys a mental image to the reader. And then it teaches grammar concepts as they go. So as they're needing to know, like the first one's teaching adjectives. Well, we're looking at a pen, and when we're looking at this pen and I want to write, this is more than a pen. It's a black pen. It's a black plastic pen. It's a triangular pen. And so I'm learning about the adjectives. Now, from there in the bye week, now we're going to talk about in the literature. We're going to talk a little bit about the main elements of literature. So the transition's kind of a hard transition, and I realize that there probably isn't a really strong explanation of that in the instructions, but that's what we're working on, is trying to develop that. The teaching companion, what this is this gives some standards for writing. Even if you didn't do Writing Strands and all you did was had your students writing paragraphs, this would give you some great guides in how to actually begin scoring their work, what to look for, how to help develop their writing skills. So I think Carity has done a review on this and has said, hey, this is, if you did nothing else, this would be a great tool to have for scoring your students' writing. The process itself, if it's a little bit cumbersome or whatnot, we're open to feedback. We're looking to improve this product. We took a product that's been established since almost for 30 years, 1988, 98, 2008. Yeah, almost 30 years has been part of the homeschool community. And it wasn't really faith-based. We wanted to begin incorporating some of the components to it because we believe that the ability to communicate ideas effectively is really important for our students. And so a lot of what's being taught here is going to be more, a little bit more open thinking, if that makes sense. Let's see, how does it, IEW? I've never used IEW, so I'm not really sure. I know IEW has a very systematic approach to it. Other people may be able to weigh in the comparison. This is designed a little bit more, I would say, almost like a spine in a way, in that it's very manageable. And some people, the writing is heavy enough in it, especially as you get into the upper levels. They'll do the writing and spread it out and then do the reading. We don't, the classic Writing Strands recommended literature that was the classics. We don't, because some of the authors' worldviews from the classics were certainly not Christian. And so unless we've published a book, we don't feel comfortable recommending it to families. We ask them to use discernment in assigning it. And I would say even if there's an account like Babe Ruth, and your student is interested in baseball and you want them to read the biography of Babe Ruth, and they read that, let's talk about the characters that are in that story and how did they develop the characters. They developed the characters from being a young boy to a man with struggle, to a man who overcame. That type of thing is what we're looking to do. And the process of this isn't that it's going to work in the first week. It's that in reading and identifying and seeing that, they're going to develop that. Now, over the course of the series, if they study the scriptures, this library of the Bible, and they're going to study the same accounts up until the last book, in which then we recommend using Pilgrim's Progress. But if they use these accounts, each time they are introduced to this account, like Adam and Eve, they're going to learn, well, here's the characters, here's the setting, what's the conflict, right? What's the resolution that happened in that conflict? So Adam and Eve are the people, happened in the Garden of Eden. The conflict is God said, don't do something. They disobeyed. Because of that, there's a consequence, the fall of man. The resolution to that is God promises redemption through his son. Because of that, we see that all of man now has to bear the burden of their actions. What's the application to that? Well, the application to that is when God says something's important, I really should take notice, because not only does my disobedience to God affect me, but it also affects all of my children and my children's children and my descendants, apart from the hope of Jesus Christ, the forgiveness he offers and the restoration he offers. So now I have some example there to be able to do that. So if you don't understand the paper or it doesn't make sense, throw it away, but understand that this is what we're trying to accomplish in this. And see, a lot of people will take this book and say, well, I keep my Bible and it's on the shelf, but they don't realize that it's a library. And this collection of 66 books offers a lot of diversity. And this is what a pastor will do every Sunday. Here's who we're talking about. Here's what was going on in this story. Here's the conflict, the resolution, and the application that we apply to our lives. And so it's kind of a very applied knowledge way of looking at literature, rather than just reading it through and not developing the critical analysis that you would use. So I do think that there's some room that we can have some improvement in the instruction and the transitions. We've come a long way in improving this in the first level, from where it was, and then rather than having to buy two courses, Writing Strands and Reading Strands, now it's all combined into one level to save money and make it a little bit easier. So hopefully that gives a little bit of explanation. Deandra says, good explaining. Good. Any questions on it or further clarification, be sure to ask. I think that for our students, the ability to think critically about what they're reading is so important. I can't say it enough. The more I study cognitive manipulation through the neuro pathways and whatnot, the more I realize, man, there are so many games that writers can play to manipulate our emotions and to move us in directions we didn't even intend to go. And the past election, if you study anything, the past election was this brilliant example of being manipulated by social media and the social behavioralists to position certain things, the way that they characterized people. For instance, and I'm not taking any political side on this, okay? So this isn't a political thing, but Donald Trump is a brilliant persuasionist. So when he would say crooked Hillary, what he was doing was adding an adjective to her name that put a whole tone or a spin on who she was and branded her. Well, we can say Hillary Clinton, blah, but when he would say crooked Hillary, blah, now it all of a sudden changed the whole perception we have. And I think that that's what Writing Strands really nails. It does a really good job of saying, let's not just say it's a pencil, let's describe it in a way that helps the reader embrace it. And so if you kind of get through some of the kludginess of it that we have, and we're going to work on that, but if you get through a little bit of that to get to the heart of what the spirit of the course is, I think you're really going to enjoy what you begin to see from your students. So let's continue to have the dialogue and the debate and discussion about it, but know that it is a series. We have some testimonials of kids who hated writing and began that course and ended up just a passion for writing, and now they're editors of magazines and different things like that. So we know that the course is effective. We love the way that it's done in, you know, it's not dependent upon a grade. It's more of a program level. And once you kind of understand what the spirit is behind it and what they want to accomplish, hopefully that will help make it a little easier for your homeschool. Let's see. Okay. Roughly what age do we recommend to start the series for? Yeah, so what we've done with this, the ages, the original age that they wanted it to start in was like grade 2. We just don't feel that that's appropriate, because really what we're asking of a student is to think a little more critically. So it's not really, and it's not the abstract thinking part, it's more the critical thinking. And so we feel that it would be better to start about 5th grade, but you could absolutely do it in a higher grade. So if you have a student who's not really doing good at descriptive writing and that type of stuff at, in say 7th grade, you could move it up to a 7th grade level and move it forward. It doesn't have the grammar, it has kind of a go as you grow, what would you say? Learn as you go grammar. So it's teaching adjectives. It'll say, this is what an adjective is, let's use it. So it's a very applied knowledge. For a lot of you that want a more traditional grammar course, this isn't that. This isn't going to spend pages talking about adjectives. It's going to use adjectives. It's going to explain an adjective, but it's not going to be a heavy grammar course. It's more of a combined writing grammar. And it's designed, the author himself had, he was a college professor, I believe. He was dyslexic and had to find a way to homeschool his son to teach him how to write. Didn't like any of the writing programs. And so he took a big piece of packing paper, spread it out across his floor, wrote everything he felt his son would need to acquire in order to be a good writer, and then developed this curriculum. And his son graduated, I think it was like 9th grade, became a professor. He's a professor today of English at the university level. So the heart behind the series was, let's get it done. Let's focus on what we communicate, but let's learn to communicate effectively. Why he studies the classics is exactly that. The classic writers knew how to use language to help the user visually see it, be motivated. You know, when you find a character in a classic story, you actually almost have a relationship with that character, right? If the writer is any good, you feel like you're there in the setting. When the conflict is revealed, you're part of that drama. And so by studying good literature, you actually begin to learn how to write that way. So I think thinking critically about a situation is so important. The other thing is being able to communicate our ideas the same way. We have such a message of hope. The message of Jesus Christ to a hurting and lost world is an unbelievable gift. Very few people can communicate that idea effectively to the culture. And I just feel that for our kids, it's so important that they begin to learn to communicate. Ultimately, in the gospel message, who are the characters? Mankind, God himself, the person of Jesus Christ, the enemy, right? We have Satan as the enemy trying to steal the inheritance we've been given. And as this unfolds, we have such a story of conflict and the resolution, the hope of Jesus Christ that we can share. And how can I apply that? See, as I begin to develop this idea, then, and I teach my children that, they'll be able to take their ideas and communicate them effectively where God has placed them. Okay. So hopefully that answers some questions. Feel free to post more questions. I felt it would be better if I could just do it in a video and explain it than trying to type it out. All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate your post, and we'll certainly stay engaged.